Hello and welcome to By the Numbers, a public health podcast. I'm Addie Olson, the Public Health Communications Officer with the Polk County Health Department. And before we begin, I just want to acknowledge that this episode discusses domestic violence, which may be difficult or triggering for some listeners. So please practice any self-care that is needed while listening, whether that includes some grounding exercises or not tuning in at all. That's perfectly okay. And if you need help, resources, and support, it is available through the Domestic Violence Hotline at 1-800-799-7233 or by visiting their website for more information. So with that, I just want to intro this topic. We're talking about domestic violence, its prevalence in Polk County, throughout Iowa. And I want to start with a number from the National Coalition Against Domestic Violence. And they have found that more than 35% of Iowa women and 29% of Iowa men experience intimate partner, physical violence, sexual violence, and or stalking in their lifetimes. So with that, I have a great guest with me today, Lori Jensen, who has more than 20 years of experience working in this field. And thank you for joining me, Lori.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. Can you start out just by talking a little bit about your work and what you do?
Sure. So I work for Children and Families of Iowa Domestic Violence Services, and I am the Director of Outreach Services. And I've been in this role since May of this year. So this is a very new position for me, but I've been with Children and Families of Iowa since 2013. And part of my role is just to manage our outreach team, and we provide, do you want me to talk a little bit about, get into that?
Yeah, that'd be great.
So we have an emergency safe shelter for survivors of domestic violence who are fleeing imminent danger from an intimate partner. And we serve Polk County and Warren County.
Okay.
So any survivor of domestic violence who may not want or need shelter at that time, but they do want that support, then that's where our outreach team comes in. So with those teams, our certified victim advocates provide victim counseling, safety planning, healthy relationship education, court advocacy. So if somebody wants help getting a civil protective order, we can help them with that. And then just attend those court proceedings with them, just kind of be there to support them. And we have support groups and domestic violence awareness classes.
So it sounds like kind of at every step in the process, from whether you're coming in, reporting domestic violence, you need a safe space to be, or you're looking for resources afterward, you guys are there to help and be there throughout that process.
Yes.
Okay. And so what is the prevalence of domestic violence in Polk County and throughout Iowa? What have you seen through your time doing this work?
So one of the most recent statistics that I found, according to the CDC, is that 1 in every 2 women, nationally experience domestic violence. And so, or intimate partner violence, stalking, sexual assault, all those things included in that number. And I believe that's pretty significant, closely related in Iowa too. But probably what we see according to just statistics in Iowa is 1 in 3 women and 1 in 4 men will experience some form of domestic abuse in their lifetime.
Wow. And how do we define domestic abuse, domestic violence?
So domestic violence would be some form of abuse, whether it's physical abuse or sexual abuse or isolation, emotional abuse, financial abuse, intimidation, threats, just kind of using the system to intimidate is kind of how we define domestic abuse. And it would be with an intimate partner. So it would be somebody that you are married to, or you're divorced from, or you have children in common. With dating, you're dating somebody that you're currently intimate with, or maybe you've recently separated from. But it's a significant sort of relationship in your life where there's an intimate connection.
Okay. And a lot of times we think of just like somebody physically assaulting, injuring a domestic partner, but it like spans so much farther than just that.
Yeah. So what we see a lot of is absolutely the physical aggression. But typically in a relationship where domestic abuse is present, and really, it's really all about that power and control. And so that's really what differentiates a relationship where there's domestic abuse, or say your average, whatever that means, healthy relationship or even an unhealthy relationship. But domestic abuse, one partner has all the power and control over the other. So they really control all aspects of their lives. And it can be very, very, very controlling. I had a client whose husband gave her a number of times she's allowed to use the restroom in a day.
Oh my
like
gosh.
you have to, like you can go first thing in the morning, you can go mid-morning, at noon, before dinner, and then before bed, and that's it. It's like they're controlling her body in that way.
Which sounds like absolutely absurd if you hear that and haven't been living in that cycle. But like if you've been in it, it starts small, right? Like it can start with small forms of control, build up to things that progress further and further and lead to death, ultimately murder in a lot of cases.
Yeah.
So I had looked at a report from the Iowa Attorney General's office from 1995 to 2021. During that time frame in Iowa, 357 men, women, and bystanders were killed in domestic violence murders, which came out to about 14 a year, and a large majority have been women. And I guess, how do we typically see domestic violence starting in relationships? Like, what are the red flags that you can look out for, either for yourself or for a friend?
Sure. Well, I think in general, in every relationship, there's that honeymoon period. And that's when it's great. You know, you just want to be with each other all the time, and it's really exciting. But in a relationship where somebody is going to be the perpetrator of domestic abuse, there might be some red flags right away in that honeymoon phase. And you might not notice it right away because everything's so great that you might just not want to believe what just happened. And it could be maybe a little bit of play fighting that just went a little too far. Like you're kind of like, oh, did that really happen? And you kind of I don't know, set that aside a little bit. Mm-hmm. But then you get into this next phase, and it's called the cycle of violence, where you go in through what's called the tension building phase. And that's where you are now modifying your behavior. So, and you might not even realize it yet. You might not even realizing you might not realize you're doing it because it's so gradual. So you stop wearing certain clothing because you know that if you're wearing this outfit, it makes your partner feel like maybe a little jealous, like you're going to get attention from another person. Or it could mean that you're now not hanging out with your friends anymore. And maybe you're not going over to spend time with your family like you used to. Maybe things that were kind of a traditional, like, I don't know, Sunday dinner, you're not doing that anymore because your partner doesn't want you to do it. And maybe they don't come right out and say, no, we're not going to go, but it's the way they behave while they're there. And maybe family starting to notice, what's going on with your partner? Why are they acting this way? And then then you find yourself in a position where I don't even want to deal with that. So I'm going to stop going. So because I'm still kind of protecting them, I'm still kind of protecting my partner. And really I'm trying to protect myself because I don't want that drama. And it's all those little instances where you feel like you're walking on eggshells and they're always wanting to know, like, giant red flag. Who are you talking to? Let me see your phone. I tell this to just almost every woman, man I work with. When your partner demands to see your phone, I mean, that is a giant red flag because it's really none of their business.
Right.
So,
and to your point about isolation, that happens without people noticing sometimes.
Absolutely.
You go from, seeing your friends and family frequently to pulling back and pulling away because of what your partner wants without even maybe realizing you're doing it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I know that you've also mentioned, you can use someone's pet or other loved ones as a means of control as well.
Yes. Sort of being abusive towards pets, which is disgusting, of course. Threatening children, even trying to get children to kind of turn against you as well, like saying bad things, bad things about you to kind of control the children, try to get everybody on their side. And really, this abusive person is really manipulative. So what happens, I know this is kind of a cliche, we never know what's going on behind closed doors.
Mm-hmm.
And you'd be shocked at some of the prominent people in our community who are abusive. And of course, I can't say anything because I'm a certified victim advocate, and confidentiality is 100% guaranteed for our clients. So,
but if you look at the numbers, I think you said 1 in 2 women have experienced some form of, was it domestic violence or verbal abuse, like any form of that in their lifetimes. So when you look at that, I mean,
that's a huge
you're going to know people.
I mean, it's a huge number.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I mean, for a long time, when I first started out as an advocate in 2015, I remember we were throwing the number like 1 in 4, like 1 in 4 women. That kind of stands out to me as the statistics. And then a few years later, it was 1 in 3. And now just recently, I found that statistic when I was preparing for another presentation. I was like, wow, 50% of women.
Yeah.
I mean, and really, I mean, the number's high for men too. For individuals, it's just rampant.
Yes. And to your point, like there is a lot of different data out there. And part of that is because reporting can't be fully relied on. You're not going to report this a lot of times if you're feeling shame, self-blame, you don't want to get your partner in trouble, you don't want to cause conflict, drama.
Right.
There are just a ton of reasons that you might not report, right?
And some of it is just confusion, like not even realizing you're in that relationship, because it's not, I mean, there's always the extremes where somebody right away is, boom, powerful, aggressive, there's an assault right away. That does happen. But in a lot of the relationships, it's so gradual that you don't even know it happened, and you find yourself in this relationship. You find yourself starting to question, like, how did I get here? I have many, many women who say to me, I feel, pretty accomplished in my life. I come from a loving family. And it can happen to anybody. And they just can't believe that they're sitting in my office talking to me about it. And it took them a long time to get there. Because I do believe, now I don't have anything to back this up except for just being a thinking human being. I do believe that when somebody is arrested for domestic abuse, that isn't their first time. Something's led up to that. I mean, it's been more than once in that relationship.
Yeah, which makes sense given what we know about how it generally tends to escalate.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so what are some of the barriers that you see to people being able to come and get help, aside from maybe not being willing to admit that they're in that situation or not being ready to come forward?
I think one of the biggest is fear. That's a big one. Fear of retribution. If I, if I call the police, or I have somebody call the police, then, I mean, my life is really going to change overnight. And it's really, really scary. And some people, and this is a feedback that I've gotten from groups of women who I've talked to, is they still love their partner. They just want their partner to stop hurting them. They want to stay in the relationship, but they just want to be safe in that relationship. And so as an advocate, I don't want to judge them. I don't want to say, oh, you shouldn't love them. I mean, it's not my role. It's how do I help you stay safe? But I'm going to point out what the risks and dangers are, because I want them to be protected, and I want to fold that into a safety plan for them. But I want them to do it at their pace. I don't want to force things on them. I want them to just throughout the process, to not only feel safe, but I want them to find some peace and some empowerment in there. So that's what I feel is my role of an advocate is.
Which has to be so hard when you're in that position and for years haven't had control or felt empowered to take control of your own life.
And maybe not even knowing how to ask for help. They might not have access to media. They might not have a phone. Their phones are tracked. I mean, I can't tell you how many people I work with say, I can't even talk on the phone because he's listening. Or they've got a tracker on the car. And I mean, it's true. They just don't feel safe.
So we've heard a little bit about your work at Children and Families of Iowa and everything you do. What other groups are out there that offer support for people who are experiencing domestic violence?
So in Polk County, there's culturally specific programs as well who help women from all over the world, including Luna and Nisa and Monsoon. You can find all of those wonderful domestic violence projects on the Iowa Coalition Against Domestic Violence website.
Okay.
And all the projects are listed in the state of Iowa by region on that website. And then if you call that, you mentioned the state hotline number at the beginning, so they can provide information. So, and then there's a the national domestic violence hotline too, who can easily access that information to you. And then we have our local crisis line, which is answered 24/7, and that's 515-243-6147. And you can call that number and be anonymous at first and just ask questions like, what do you do? How can you help me? What does it look like? Or I might only have 5 minutes to talk and I might have to hang up, and there might have to be another way to make contact, but the help is out there.
I went to a website and I can't remember if it was the National Coalition Against Domestic Violence. I can't recall what website it was, but there was a little button at the top that was like, hide this website.
Yes.
And as soon as you clicked it, it went back to like your Google search bar so that
Yes.
it didn't look like you were actually on that website looking for help.
And it's supposed to erase that search history too, so you can't go back and search for it. So we have that on the Children and Families of Iowa website. So that's kind of like a quick exit. Mm-hmm. So because you never know who's over their shoulder, and that's thank you for bringing that up, because that's such a huge concern. Is no matter what I do on the internet, my abusive partner is going to know what I'm doing.
Mm-hmm.
And so sometimes they just leave with just the clothes on their back.
Wow.
When they come to us, they might not have. And when you think about all the things that you need to survive, your documents, your driver's license, your medical cards, your prescriptions, the things that you need for your kids.
Mm-hmm.
So when we talk about safety planning, we talk about, okay, if you have a moment, because an abusive partner is going to be sneaky too and controlling, so they're probably not going to let you have those documents. They're not going to just say, yeah, sure, grab them and take them. So try to figure out how you can compile that. So we help come up with ways. Take a picture of it with your phone. Try to get maybe a burner phone, hide it somewhere in your house so you can call 911 if you have to. So there's just lots of creative ways we can help people safety plan.
And that's all part of that safety plan.
Yes. Yeah.
And I know you've shared a little bit about what it looks like and feels like for people who are experiencing domestic violence. Do you have any like specific stories that have stuck with you over the years?
Oh yeah, I've had I worked with this one wonderful woman for several months, and she had kind of realized after being with her husband for many years that it was abusive. There were moments where he was very rough with her, and there was intimidation because he was a pretty big guy, and she was just very petite, and she was afraid that he could do anything. With his by size and force alone, he could really harm her. But they had two. I think they had a daughter and a son, and they were scared of him as well. Mm. Now, he was never physically abusive to the kids, but when you're abusive to mom, that's a parenting choice. Because you're yelling and treating mom and belittling mom in front of the kids. And so she thankfully her kids were older and they were getting ready. They were able to, move on, go to college. And so I think the perfect storm happened for us, the safety plan, that making sure the documents were together, getting what she needed out of there, and really coming up with a plan so that once she was ready to leave, she could get that civil protective order right away. And then she was able to get out of the state for a couple of weeks because he would have to be served by a sheriff.
Okay.
So Polk County Sheriff. So it sticks with me, and she's doing really, really well now. But every now and then she and I talk, but it's still it still impacts her. It still impacts the kids.
And still impacts you.
It still impacts me. I think about her, you know. But I'm really happy that she was able to get away. But not everybody's lucky like that. No, not everybody has the resource, and I shouldn't say lucky. Not everybody can just leave. I mean, this is lots of economic reasons. I mean, if you've never had access to money, if you've never been allowed, if you've been married or date or with somebody for years and you don't know anything about the finances, you don't know if your partner has open credit cards in your name. I mean, you might not, it sounds crazy, but you might not have any idea what that situation's like. And then when you get to the point where you're trying to leave, you find out, wait a minute, what happened to my credit? Or maybe I don't even have credit. I've never been allowed to work. And maybe when I was able to work, my jobs were sabotaged because my partner was showing up at work and causing all this drama, and my boss finally fired me. You know, or maybe I got a black eye, so I'd have to stay home. Or maybe my car would be sabotaged, so I couldn't leave. Those are unfortunately pretty common.
And like every facet of your life can be destroyed.
Absolutely. And then starting over is hard because how if you never work, how do you afford to live? So it's just really rebuilding and having that support. So,
okay.
Yep.
And I know I made a nice little outline for this podcast that I then did not follow.
That's okay.
So what have we missed up to this point? And what's like the main message that you would want anyone who's listening to take away from this?
That help is available, and you can call our crisis line or any of the lines, and you can remain anonymous and just ask for help.
Okay.
And just believe in yourself. Believe that it can happen and that you can be safe. And we really want that for you. And you don't have to be in this alone, but you're not going to be pressured. And our services are free, all domestic violence services, free, confidential, and voluntary. So if you get your foot in the door with us and you decide, you know what, I'm just not ready, that's okay. You can turn around and leave. It's not going to bother us at all.
Okay.
So
take whatever steps you can. To get there.
Absolutely.
Okay. Well, thank you for joining me today.
Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely. And thank you so much for listening. If you need help, be sure to get the help you need. We'll make sure that we share some phone numbers along with the video recording that we'll have on YouTube. And we hope that you have taken good care of yourself throughout this episode. And please be sure to tune in to future episodes of By the Numbers. Thank you.